All right, everyone. I am excited to introduce my next guest. His 40-year career spans film, TV, and theater. Director of Some Kind of Hero, Dr. Detroit, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. That's a
True.
mouthful.
Secret of the Ooze. You've got
Secret
it.
of the Ooze, of course.
Right, of course.
Directed Picket Fences episodes, Blue Blood, so a million things. If I read everything, that would be the whole show. Please welcome the amazing producer, director, Michael Pressman. Hey.
Hey, good to meet you, Jeff, on
Great.
the air.
Great to meet you as well. There's so much.
As the old Groucho Marx line, let's begin at the beginning, and when you come to the end, stop.
I mean, so you were born into
Yeah, a theater family. I mean, my parents came from Russia. My grandfather was a violist in the Russian Grand Opera Company. They came with the opera company in the 1920s. My father didn't speak any English. At the age of 9, he learned. Then he went to theater school, became an actor, became a director. My mother was a dancer, and they met. They got married, and I was born in a trunk, as they say. So I was exposed at a very early age, and it's a great plus. And yet at the same time, you deal with the issues. How do you separate from your parents? How do you become your own voice, your own person? That was a big issue for me, though I will say I was very, very lucky that I had a terrific dad who lived to 98. And he died 10 years ago. As he said, if he got that old, he would have taken better care of himself, and he could have made it to 100. He was a teacher, an acting teacher, and I learned so much from my father.
your father's story alone is fascinating, being blacklisted.
He was when the Depression came, he had Russian history, and it looked like the answer would be the Communist Party, of which I had always remember asking him, so what went on in the Communist? Well, we would talk about socialized medicine, the right for blacks to vote, Social Security. It was like having Bernie Sanders be your father. You know what I mean? I mean, it was like those were the issues, this notion of the violent overthrow of the government. My father got very busy in the theater and live television, and he didn't have time for the Communist Party. It didn't matter. But in the middle, he was drafted and fought in World War II for 2.5 years and was wounded, Purple Heart, almost died, and was a devoted, loyal American. And then, of course, when the McCarthy period hit, and anybody who had any association with anything left in the 30s, any connection to the Communist Party, you were blacklisted, of which is almost impossible to explain and for people who are young to understand. But what happened was, let's say you had a job. It's almost like today the way our government is trying to silence and cancel people. My father's working at CBS, and he's on a TV show, and he gets a phone call, and they go, we got to let you go. And he goes, what do you mean? We can't say. But his name appeared in some Red Channel's book, which was a magazine that was being printed by a reactionary Christian right who owned shopping centers around the country, and he was affecting advertisers. Short version, he couldn't get a job in television or for 15 years. Thank God he knew teaching, went back into the theater, and then when the blacklist opened up and broke, he was already in his mid-60s and had missed 15 years of the best years of his life.
Well, maybe that's why he stuck around, squeeze in all that other stuff that he did.
Right.
He had a career right after that too, right?
He ended up directing One Life to Live for 25 years until he was 85 years old, and he won 3 Emmys. It certainly had quite a resurgence and was beloved.
He's got 3 Emmys. You got a couple Emmys. Where do you keep all the family Emmys?
Very funny. I have 2 brothers. Each one has one, and I have 2. So I have 3 on the shelf.
How did this whole blacklisting, how did it affect you?
How did it affect me?
In your career and how you saw it?
I'll tell you, it was a kind of dose of reality that you're never sure what tomorrow's going to bring. Be grateful for what you have. My father never lost his positive attitude. He was never bitter. He understood what happened, and it was a bad, bad time. I think I was feeling like I got the best of what all that hardships were, not to take anything for granted, and feel grateful for the good things that happen.
Well, it sounds like your dad found his footing during it and then came out strong at the end. All right. So then, did you know you always wanted to be, or did you want to be an
Okay.
actor first?
I wanted to be an actor. And actually, I joined an acting group at the YMHA in Manhattan, in New York, if you're aware of this, of New York. But there was the Young Men's Hebrew Association. They had a acting group. And in fact, it's crazy, but my wife, who we reconnected after knowing each other as children, she was in the acting group too. We actually found out, we forgot. I was 12. We were in a play together, but we didn't act on stage together. I was in these plays, and the professional world found me. The director of one of the plays was doing a stock production of 1,000 Clowns. I was 12 years old. I got cast in it. I ended up acting in it in Florida, Coconut Grove, Florida. I was 12. In the cast was Dom DeLuise, who was a 28-year-old, up-and-coming comedian who was one of the funniest people I ever met at the age of 12, I have to tell you. And he was so funny because fade out, fade in. I'm in my 20s, or I don't know, it was like 15 years later, I'm working at a studio and I'm leaving CBS, and they're shooting a commercial. Dom DeLuise is starring in the commercial. Anyway, so I go up to him and I introduce myself. So, of course I remember you. I said, I remember everything that happened. He said, why not? You were 12 years old. Of course you'd remember everything that ever happened. It was a great experience. Yeah, so I wanted to be an actor. My father had a 16 millimeter Keystone wind-up camera from the war. We would take home movies, and I soon became the home movie maker, and I made these little films. So I got the bug early on, and though I had acted professionally in several other productions, by the time my college time came around, I went to Carnegie for theater, but after 2 years I left and transferred to CalArts to study film with a brilliant film director-teacher named Alexander Mackendrick, who was famous for Sweet Smell of Success, which is one of the great movies of all time, and then The Lady Killers starring Alec Guinness, which was one of the classic British comedies. I studied with him for 3 years, and I have to say I learned a tremendous amount about structure and film image and editing and storytelling with a camera. It was an amazing 3 years. So that launched me out into the real world, where I struggled for another 2 years. I remember at one point, my wife, we had met in high school. This was my earlier marriage. She was working at a record store, and I was trying to get a job during the Christmas holidays at a shoe store, and they didn't hire me. And I'm going, I'm 23, 24. I can't even get hired at a shoe store. It had reached all-time lows. I got a job writing ideas for Hanna-Barbera cartoons, of which after 4 months they fired me. And then I had a dear, dear friend from school, Jonathan Kaplan, who recently passed, but a wonderful director. White Line Fever, The Accused, tremendous credits. But he had done 2 Roger Corman movies. And Jonathan came out and said to LA, and I was there, and we met, and he said, you got to meet Roger Corman. I followed Jonathan's advice. I got an idea for a Roger Corman movie. I met Roger Corman. He committed to it. He canceled it. Called Jonathan. What do I do? He went, go back. Just go back with another idea. So I go back with somebody else, and he gives us a distribution commitment. If you raise $200,000, I'll give the financiers $175 back. So they're investing they guaranteed 2/3 of their money back. That took about a year to pull together. Did it with friends, people who ended up being in the business. David Irving was a producer. He ended up being head of NYU Film School. Sean Daniel became an executive at Universal. He was the second AD. I mean, we all bonded together. David Kirkpatrick wrote the screenplay. He became president of Paramount. This was wild times. Made this movie. I directed it, The Great Texas Dynamite Chase. That was really the beginning of launching my movie career. Having a movie that played in movie theaters, that got reviewed, got well reviewed, and turned out to be better than average. It was actually quite an entertaining movie.
An amazing movie poster. One thing I wanted to say is I went to when I was on your website, and you have like a movies tab and a TV tab. The movies tab it's not everything, but it's like this highlight, and I'm like, damn, that's a murderer's row of amazing movie posters. I wanted to know. I was so picturing in my head you having them like in a hallway.
I don't. I have them in the basement somewhere, but it's an interesting point because it's true. They are pretty spectacular posters. they're too big to put in my office. They'll come out somewhere. I think it's a very sweet idea, which is they are pretty crazy, wild posters, aren't they?
Yeah, all of them. I have a bunch of movie posters framed in my basement. They ended up in the basement after I got married, but I guess I'm lucky they're even still there. Really fun kind. Because I think that's a lost art. Now they all kind of somewhat look alike.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point. It is a lost art because when you go further back, I bought about a half a dozen movie posters of films I love. They're real works of art.
Yeah, I have a whole chest in the basement of just rolled up movie posters. Some I had framed. I didn't think back then I put them on the backing. So I've got like the 89 Batman, but I'm like an original. But
I have the French copy of Lawrence of Arabia, Laurence d'Arabie, whatever. And then I've got Dr. Strangelove, an original poster.
Nice.
Bicycle Thieves.
I love it. Love it. Love it. Moving through your amazing movie poster.
I mean, I'll jump through it quickly for you. After the Great Texas Dynamite Chase, I had
Bad News Bears, right?
Yes, but I'm going to give you the real world story as opposed to the story of fantasy. The fantasies, and then I directed Bad News Bears for Paramount Pictures. Okay, the reality is I went for a year without working, and I made $5,000 on the Great Texas Dynamite Chase. So that basically got us by back in 1976. The place I was renting, or we were renting, was $175 a month in Laurel Canyon. So mathematically it could work out. She kept her job at the record store. And I had an agent. This agent was just beginning. His name was Jim Burkus. He ended up being head of UTA and formed that agency. He calls me and goes, first he says to me, hey, there's an opportunity to direct an episode of a TV show. I want you to meet the producer. So I go in and I meet, and he says, well, it's a cop show and a lot of action, and it shoots in 7 days. Can you do it? And I have to honestly tell you, I had seen my father direct television, and I'd seen how hard it was. And I said, I'm not sure. And he went, you're not sure? I said, well, I can't tell you I can honestly do it. I mean, I've never done anything on that kind of schedule. So I didn't get it. And my agent was like, how could you have said, of course you say yes, of course you can do it. And I said, well, I was telling the truth. I mean, I didn't want to get myself in trouble. Okay, next call I get is the phone rings in our house, and it's hold for Don Simpson, head of Paramount Studios. Don Simpson calls and he goes, hi, I just watched a print in those days, 35 millimeter print, of the Great Texas Dynamite Chase, and we are looking for a director for the sequel of the Bad News Bears. Would you be interested in coming in? And I'll send you the script. And I go, yes. So my agent calls me and says, oh my God, this could be big. And I said, I just read the script. It's awful. It's god awful. He said, you can't turn this down. You just can't turn this down. I'm telling you. Okay. I said, okay. So I go in, and there I meet Don Simpson and other executives. Richard Silbert is the executive at the time. I think Barry Diller, Michael, it was like superstars. Sitting next to me is a guy named Paul Brickman, who I just meet for the first time, and he has written a movie, and he's going to do a full rewrite on the script. And I breathe a sigh of relief, little that I know that Paul Brickman ends up writing and directing Risky Business and is a brilliant screenwriter. Thank God he wrote a brilliant script, and the movie gods shine down on us. I got to make a really pretty terrific sequel. And the thing I do remember from the meeting was they said, here you go, guys. It's December 1st. This film has to be in the theaters by July. You're going to start shooting hopefully by March. You'll finish in May, and you'll have about 4 weeks to edit, and then it goes out in the theaters. And they said the first film started with an idea, became a script, a movie, and then was a hit. This one is starting with a release date, and then you're going to shoot it, and then at the end, hopefully you'll come up with an idea. So it was like in reverse. And I have to say, we busted our asses and worked our butts off, and that movie changed my career. All of a sudden, I'm getting offers for films, and I'm now a successful movie director at the age of 26. It makes much less sense today than it did then. But at the time, Steven Spielberg was 24 and 27, and other directors were in their 20s, and the doors were wide open at Hollywood studios for young directors out of film school, predominantly male, maybe even predominantly Jewish, Spielberg, Pressman, whatever. And then I started following my heart and read scripts and did films that were very unconventional and were not necessarily commercially successful, and did Boulevard Nights, which was an amazing script and totally different project, and it was about the East Los Angeles Chicano gangs, and film was hit badly during the gang riots on the streets from the Warriors, and Warner Brothers pulled it, but it ended up having an incredible post-life in video, and then got recently chosen to be at the Library of Congress as one of the 25 great films of, I think, the last 5 years was when it was put it.
As being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant.
Yeah, it sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Looking up some stuff on that movie, it was like, it did not make a lot of money. It considered a box office failure. Roger Ebert kind of gave it 2.5 stars.
Right.
What was interesting about it was that it just goes to show you, like, none of that matters. If you're creating art, sometimes it just doesn't get recognized, and eventually it will. That was the cool part of the story, was eventually.
I had been very depressed after that movie came out and thought I had really blown it and that I had not succeeded in making a good film. And then for it to get rediscovered, and then, I think it was about 3 years ago now, God, time flies, there was a screening at Warner Brothers of a new 4K restoration of the film. People were blown away. And it really was like an art film. I mean, it was uncompromising, really looking at a culture in crisis.
Because when I was reading it, said there was a lot, like the Warriors, Walk Proud, the Wanderers, Over the Edge. There was a burst of gang movies. They said what set yours apart was it was a family story set in a gang environment.
We actually got some great reviews in LA, but New York panned it. It was like it was really, talk about cultural bias. Who cares about East LA and Chicano Mexican American community? That made no sense in New York. It was really a terrible experience, though. The film was a great experience. The release of it was so painful. When it opened and it played for 2 weeks in New York, phenomenal box office in the theaters and where the audience went. The State Theater in downtown LA was making $35,000 a week. But what happened is that there was a shootout in San Francisco on the opening day in a Japanese gang community. Studio didn't know. They opened the film. There was a shootout and the film was shut down and closed in San Francisco. And then about a few days later, Warner Brothers just pulled the film. It wasn't worth people dying. I understand. I agree. But it could have been handled differently. But there was no streaming. There was no way to get the film out. It would have been a perfect film for today's world on a streaming platform.
Glad it was eventually given its due. So that's
yeah.
It's got to feel good. I did have one question about Bad News Bears. IMDb says that Jackie Earle Haley and William Devane duked it out. Is this true?
Where is that? That's absolutely not true, but that's okay. I love, how do they create these things? I wouldn't say it was a buddy-buddy friendship, but very respectful as actors, and I had no trouble at all. In fact, it was a very rewarding part of the film because they were, I don't know if you've heard, and if you haven't, you probably should check out Quentin Tarantino's podcast about the Bad News Bears sequel, which is one of his favorite sequels of the 70s. But what he said, and he's absolutely right, and it didn't penetrate me completely until he mentioned it. He said, they don't look like actors, they look like a real father and son thing. It was like the casting was amazing. Now, we had Marion Doherty casting the movie, who was one of the famous casting women, and she came up with the idea of Bill Devane. Bill Devane I knew slightly, and he came in, and he didn't audition, but he interviewed for the movie. He was dying to do it. He was semi-pro ball, and that whole sequence was created for him to practice with the kids and really do his baseball. He's terrific. I wrote him about 10 years ago because I recently had seen a new DVD Blu-ray release, and I did a commentary on it. And I noticed that he was singularly responsible for making the whole game at the Houston Astrodome work, because when we shot him at first base, we shot for 7 or 8 days in the Astrodome. And every day was like, okay, first base, then second base, then third base, and then some high shots, and then home plate. It was like you never could do the whole thing because we only had about 1,000 extras. And of course, the stadium held, 40,000 people. When he did his coverage, it would stop and start. He'd say, okay, in inning one, who's at bat? Who's on first? How many outs? Da 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 da. And he would improvise. Okay, Carmen, let's go. You, hey, so run to second when the ball is. He basically was narrating the logic of the film, investing in telling the team how to handle it. If you watch it with that in mind, you can see that he is the anchor for the whole sequence, and it's really quite wonderful.
He is so great. All right, well, I'm glad to hear. I like debunking sometimes the trivia on IMDb.
I bring it on. That's one I never heard.
Yeah, it said that they were going to fight. And 42 people that found that helpful. I hope you're hearing this and now it's not true. Okay, we'll move on. Oh, we talked about Boulevard Nights, and then
you know how you really know it's not true. Neither Bill Devane or Jackie Earle Haley have even commented on it.
It's funny. It's like sometimes like the bits of trivia, they're like, oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, and then sometimes they're like, no. So it's hit or miss. So some kind of hero. I had Lynn Moody on my podcast. She's amazing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Recently?
Well, in my head recently, but it was probably a year or so ago.
Oh, still. Wonderful lady. Did you talk at all about the movie?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about for sure. And then you just wrote an article in the Hollywood Reporter. Right. How was it working? How was it like taking on the job of working with comedy legend Richard Pryor, but making a drama? Okay,
let me back it up. I had a deal with Paramount at that point because of the Bad News Bears movie and its success. So I had a commitment for them to offer me another movie. But I went off to do Boulevard Nights at Warner Brothers, and they were fine. But I got a call again from Don Simpson, who was pretty much my biggest fan there. And he says, you come and meet me. And he says, he closes the door and he goes, you got to help me out. We owe Richard Pryor a movie. And if he doesn't, we've sent him a script and he wants to do it. But if we don't do it, we owe him $1 million anyway. So we've got to make this movie. And I went, oh my God, this is a little late. He said, look, go meet him. We fly out to Hawaii with Howard Koch and Robert Boris, who's the rewriter of it. It was a very tense couple of days, but the second day, Richard and I met alone, and he took me out on his dock, on his property, and he had been not in a film in about a year, and it was a result of the accident that happened with getting burned and all that, and he wanted to do a drama. And he said, why do you want to make this movie? And I said, I think it's a really important story. I will honor what we agree on. I wasn't there to say, listen, Richard, we're going to turn it into a comedy. I think if I had done that, he probably would not have done the film, or they would have gotten a director who said what I said. I was genuine and honest. How can I put this? I thought his best work had been in Blue Collar. And I thought he was potentially a terrific, and turned out to be a terrific, serious actor. So this was creatively kind of exciting and challenging. And that's where my head was at. I'm 29. Who understands this business? Who understands it today? I mean, none of this makes sense, and it certainly didn't make sense then. Make a long story short, we had a great time making the film. And the real problems became once the film was finished and how to release it, because the studio became incredibly nervous because of its controversial relationship between Margot Kidder and Richard Pryor on the screen. Richard's representatives became nervous. Hence, he went ahead and did the Live on the Sunset Strip, which opened 2 weeks before Some Kind of Hero opened. It kind of hurt the success of Some Kind of Hero. Some Kind of Hero was a modest hit, and it was #1 for a few weeks, and I think it made $30 million at the end of the day. I mean, I'd have to double check, but it didn't fit into the Richard Pryor comedy world. And the film, I think, has suffered as a result of that. It yet has not been, quote, rediscovered, which is interesting.
I read that they edited the whole thing behind your back, right? I mean, they changed the movie.
It wasn't behind my back, but it was upon their orders and instructions.
Okay.
Which is, it ain't going to end up the way the script was written. And you're going to cut that sex scene down to its bare bones. And we had to test it. I think I got to test my version. And then afterwards, and we went to Anchorage, Alaska, where Don Simpson was born, which was truly insane. And then after 50 people seeing it, they said, okay, now you got to cut it the way we want it.
So that's the Anchorage, Alaska story. Okay. 50 lucky people in Anchorage, Alaska. So I've seen the full sex scene between Margot Kidder and Richard Pryor.
Right. Pretty crazy.
Was it cathartic then to reflect on this, 40 some years later, writing this article?
Yeah, I think so. I think it put some things in perspective for me. I got to say, I also feel like you're lucky you get a movie made, number one. Number two, you're even luckier if the movie is successful. And even more, if you get to make the movie you want to make. This one was what was most rewarding, and I don't know if I captured this in the piece I wrote, but I think I'll be writing more about this as I get into my later years. The real gift was working with Richard Pryor, having somebody who had the ability to learn his lines, play a character, rehearse, and then while shooting, discover spontaneously something that occurs in the scene that makes the scene work. And that's another whole podcast unto itself. It's the process that I really took from making that film, which was the ability to be open and flexible.
So it sounds like working with Richard Pryor was awesome.
Totally. Beyond. And I saw him several times after the film. We stayed in touch a little bit. Once I was again, I don't know, it was on Melrose Avenue, and they were shooting JoJo Dancer around the corner, and I went over and I said, I want to say hello to Richard. So I went in there, and he's in his trailer, and he goes, I owe you an apology. And I went, what? You don't owe me an apology. He said, I didn't know, because he was directing JoJo Dancer. He says, I didn't know how hard directing is. He goes, I thought it was easy. I owe you. I must have been so difficult. I went, no, you weren't. We had a good time. Come on. He said, I owe every director I've ever worked with a big apology. It was very funny.
From one comedy legend to another, Dan Aykroyd.
Dan Aykroyd is also one of the great spontaneous comedians. Was great experience. I mean, we had a lot of issues with the script. We were rewriting all the time, but he, again, came up with the best lines. He created the Dr. Detroit character. I'll never forget that. I mean, he was worked on it with great details of what he wanted to do, and he was terrific. And then, of course, he met his wife on the movie, Donna Dixon. That was quite something.
And then you mentioned earlier working with a top-notch writer, but Carl Gottlieb was involved with this as well.
Yes. Carl was brought in the final stages of another rewrite, and basically, in that regard, did a tremendous amount of work. And I've read a couple of times publicly he didn't think the film lived up to his script, but that's writers talking for you. I had a great time with Carl. I thought that I am surprised at how many people love that movie. I don't know what to tell you. It always surprises me. Secretly tell me that at the age of 14, they were watching that on HBO late at night or something.
Everyone was probably also falling in love with Donna Dixon at 14 as well.
Yeah. You were not alone.
Yeah, Carl Gottlieb, I had him on the podcast too. I got to say he wrote the screenplay for Jaws, Dr. Detroit, and then also The Jerk with Steve Martin, amongst a million other things.
Very talented guy and very funny.
Very funny guy, yeah, as well. So yeah, he was taking credit for introducing... He took credit for Aykroyd. Well, he said he was in two movies where the people met their wives, and the other one was Caveman, which was when Ringo Starr and Barbara Bach.
Oh, okay.
What would you consider the greatest James Brown musical number in a movie? I'll give you three to choose from. You can choose your own if you want. There's the Blues Brothers, there's Rocky IV, and Dr. Detroit. I mean, there may be others too, but of those...
Well, I think Blues Brothers is really the number one.
I agree. I think in this case, I was thinking about it and I'm like, I don't know. I think it's the first case where you can argue three-way tie. There's something about James Brown that just makes...
It was original. It was original in Blues Brothers. We were homaging Blues Brothers. And so in that respect, if it hadn't happened, I think we wouldn't have been breaking that kind of ground. I would say, however, that it couldn't have come at a crazier moment in the movie, so I thought that was pretty funny for Dr. Detroit. I have no real perspective on it, but I think I can be fair.
Yes. And another great poster.
Yep.
So
Yep.
so many greats. I was a huge Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fan. Was obsessed with all those movies. I was found them so fun, so fun. But this is another one where you took over the sequel. Do you find it harder to do sequels, like because there's an expectation coming off like a strong first movie?
I felt that way for Bad News Bears very much because I remember when I saw the original and I heard about the idea of doing the sequel, I thought that's really crazy. How do you make a better film? And I think as pure cinema, we didn't make a better film. But with the Bad News Bears sequel, we mined new elements and didn't and that's why the father-son story became so strong. And upon later viewing, you realize that the movie had a real center that was different than the first one. And we honored the structure of the first one, playing the big finale game, and etc. I will honestly say I was doing television movies at the time, and after having made 6 movies, and we've skipped over Those Lips, Those Eyes, which was one of my favorites, but it was very badly released, and Heaven's Gate took the space of all the UA movies at the time, and so we got sort of pushed aside. It was hard to get a movie. I had a dear friend who was a line producer on television movies who called me out of the blue and said, I just met on the sequel to Ninja Turtles, and they are looking for a director who has worked on a schedule for television, but has also made movies. And when I mentioned your name, they all lit up because you had also done a sequel. And I went, well, okay, but what is it? He said, so you're like perfect for this. I go to the movie theater before I have the meeting to see the original, of which, yeah, but I'm not blown away. I'm not going, oh, this is brilliant. I'm going, there's some good stuff. There's this. It's a little messy. It's a little dark. It took itself so seriously. But thank God, when I go to the meeting, they want to change the whole tone of the sequel. They want to make it lighter, funnier, and another writer whom I got along with, who was going to do a whole new script. And it becomes a chance to really do something completely different. And I was able to basically honor the Turtles, but not have to honor the first film. They are different movies completely. It's funny because I got to laugh about this. There's this great, digress for 1 second. One of the original Carl Reiner, Mel Brooks, 2,000-Year-Old Man album that I know by heart that came out when I was a kid. There's an interview with a folk singer, and Mel Brooks is the folk singer. Carl Reiner says, what's your song? He says, well, you want to hear 22 Men? And he goes, 22 Men? He goes, yeah. And so Mel Brooks goes, 22 men fell down and hurt their knees. And he starts to sing the song. And Carl Reiner stops and says, well, wait a minute. Have you got any other songs? Yeah. Okay. 22 German soldiers hurt their knees. And he starts to sing that. And Carl Reiner says, well, wait a minute. That's the same song. He says, oh, no. It's the first one's just 22 men. The second one's 22 German soldiers. It's completely different. So I'm laughing at myself saying we had nothing to do with the first film. All we had was the Ninja Turtles. I mean, of course it's the same genre because I've got Ninja Turtles in the second one and there's Ninja Turtles in the first. But we did attempt to come up with new ways to tell that story in a kind of light Marx Brothers kind of genre, which led to Vanilla Ice showing up at the, it got crazier and crazier. Again, if you're going to do a movie like that, you better have a good time. And I did. I had a great time making that film. And we shot for 75 days with 2 units, $40 million non-union. So there was no superstars and things. And it was just an ultimate joy. And I basically thought I probably ended my career. So the film comes out, and the first day of release, I'm driving and I'm listening to the radio, and then I'm hearing, hey, it's 2 p.m. on the radio here in Hollywood, and little Johnny is with his mom to see the sequel of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and he's cut out of school today. And he says, what do you think? I can't wait, little Johnny says, well, by the like of it, it looks like little Johnny and his mom are the only people here. Boom. I pull over. I go, oh my God, what do you mean, 2 kids at the movie theater, a boy and his mom? I call the head of distribution at New Line, and I go, what's going on? And he goes, oh, it's Hollywood. Don't worry. The film is performing like gangbusters all over the country. It's a monster hit. I hung up, and I almost like burst into tears going, is my whole future in the hands of 8-year-olds and 10-year-olds? I mean, it was like, you got to be serious. Anyway, film was a great success, kind of revitalized my career, and I'm glad I did it.
Was it fun working with the Jim Henson Creature Shop?
Terrific. They went to England, sold their shop. It takes 4 people to be a turtle. You know, it took an actor, a mime in the suit, wearing a head with remote servers for the eyes to move. You need a puppeteer off camera with his head in a shield mask. So every movement is picked up on the turtle head. And then for any action, we had to get a stunt kid without that heavy head, which was like 20 pounds. So he could do stunts. So you'd have to cut. And then once all that was done, we had to bring in a 4th actor to do all the voicing of each character, so that every turtle was a different actor's voice. So I say 4 people were a turtle.
That's really cool. I've talked to one of the turtles from the first movie, Josh Pies, and then was Robbie Rist one of the voices for this one too?
Not in the sequel.
Not in the sequel. Okay. But you
he
did
was in the
have
original.
Elmo with Splinter.
Yes.
Kevin
Yes.
Clash.
Kevin Clash had a terrible event. I'm not even sure I understand whatever happened in terms of his career, but there was some abuse. I don't know what happened. All I know is he was brilliant and delightful, and he did the Splinter voice.
Right, and was he the puppeteer for it too, or?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was just calling back the bad.
I know. His puppeteering was different than the Turtles. The Turtles were electronic heads. He actually had the Splinter in his hand, because you never saw Splinter's full body.
You did the Vanilla Ice, what's it called? Video, the music video.
No, I didn't do the music video.
Oh, you didn't do that? You're credited.
No, I mean, I did his sequence in the film, but I never
okay.
ended up. Yeah. Unless they cut something together for him, I didn't see it.
Yeah, there's a ninja rap.
Oh, yeah, he did ninja rap for us in the film.
It's listed separate, so that's why.
Oh.
So, and then you had like this amazing career with David E. Kelley.
Right. So what happened was, oh boy, I finished Turtles. I got a call from this executive at NBC to direct a pilot, and the pilot didn't sell, but it was very close but no cigar. They loved the pilot, didn't sell. The executive said at 20th Century Fox, we would love you to meet David Kelley and be considered for Picket Fences. So I met him. We had a great meeting. He didn't hire me. He hired somebody else to do the pilot. And then out of the blue, 3 or 4 months later, he calls me and says, would you like to be an co-exec producer? And I remember saying to him, I can say, let me think about it, but I'll answer actually for you right now and say yes. Because it was at the high point. It was like the greatest job to have in television, to be a director, producer of a series. Little did I know it would become an Emmy-winning, touted series. And it was his first after L.A. Law that he had joined. He didn't create. And who knew he would go on to make all that incredible work? But we had a 10-year partnership, and I did the 4 seasons on Picket Fences, and then I did the pilot to Chicago Hope. And then I came in on the 6th season of Chicago Hope, and then I did Lake Placid as a producer for him, and then Jillian, he wrote the screenplay of that I directed. We did 2 movies, series, and then I did a lot of episodes for him.
Yeah, you did Practice, you did Boston Public,
Boston Legal.
Boston Legal. There's a million of them. There was one I saw in there, Damages. I know, I don't think that's David E. Kelley, but the reason it popped out is because Glenn Kessler. I went to Sunday school with him.
Now, didn't Glenn Kessler just do a brilliant miniseries called The New Look? Was that him?
I don't know. I know his brother was big had a big stint on The Sopranos early on as well, Todd. And then
it might be Todd. I think, was Glenn actually acting? I'm going to check as we talk.
But yeah, you did. I mean, Harry's Law, you did Grey's Anatomy, Weeds, Blue Bloods. You've done pretty much everything. I
don't know about everything, but I've done a lot of work.
I feel like we've barely scratched the surface.
I know. Well, we've covered good ground. I know we're hitting the timeline here. Is there any? You know what we haven't mentioned, but it's okay. Is my whole other life of theater. I've been directing theater, and I'm about to start directing a revival of Night Mother for the Goodman Theater in Chicago for their next season. starring Essa-Patha Murkison, who was in Come Back Little Sheba, of which she won a Tony nomination when we did it on Broadway.
Come Get Maggie, Finks, to Jillian. I mean, there's so much stage. I mean, you've had like such a multifaceted career. So, but you would have to come back 2 or 3 times for us to.
Yeah, we haven't just touched the surface,
Yeah.
right? We got it. All right. Well,
Let's see.
I'll do it. This was fun. You got me going. What can I tell you?
Thank you for spending this time with me. And we could have a part 2. We could do a whole episode on those lips, those eyes, and we could do just
those eyes. And Frankie and Johnny are married. The 2 theater films, and then the theater work in Law and Order SVU.
a million things. You're amazing.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. So are you. And how long have you had the podcast now? How long is it?
6 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
My pleasure. Talk to you. Bye.